connection is working well. Welcome to another weekly live stream with Colorism Healing. I am your weekly host of sorts, Dr. Sarah Webb. This week, I am excited to be bringing on a guest. I see one viewer on Facebook, so if you have an Instagram account, you'll get the full experience if you hop on over to Instagram. But I'm interviewing Miyoshi, who is currently a Canadian resident by way of the Bahamas, talking about her experiences with colorism, but also through her career and her profession and her job and helping businesses, especially craft beer breweries, incorporate more diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I am looking forward to that. Hello. It says, we love Miyoshi. Oh, cool. This is Kid Hugh. She is a superstar. Well, that's good to know. It's great to get a cosign. What I know of her, I haven't met her yet. I'll be meeting her for the first time today. But what I know is that she's pretty cool. And I look forward to hearing, learning about her and her experiences as well. Let's see. Yay. So usually I have people drop in the comments where they're tuning in from, where you're located currently. Also, if you want to drop in your hometown, where you're from whence you hail. Announcements. Remember that group coaching starts June 6th on my birthday. So if you're interested, we can set up a consultation. I'll tell you more about it. There's all the information on the website, colorismhealing.com as well. All right. So let's see. Hey, Sienna. Oh, yeah. So Sienna is one of our judges. So judging is underway, folks. Here goes my laptop fan again. I might need to delete some files on my laptop because it keeps heating when I go live on Facebook. But hopefully the sound is not as bad as it was last time. I'm moving the phone away from the laptop. All right. So, yeah, I think I was in the middle of saying that judging is underway for the contest, thanks to folks like Bobby Simmons and Sienna Morgan. And we will be announcing results hopefully by the end of May. So if you submitted, hold tight if you submitted. T. Drink says, woo woo, hi Dr. Webb and Miyoshi. Yeah, we see you have a lot of fans on here, Miyoshi, already, and you haven't even come on. Yes. Miyoshi is Craft Beer Phoenix on IG. Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Yes. Nice to officially meet you. Talk in
You
live,
as well.
like not just in the DMs.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Oh, I wanted to tell you too. So before we get started,
Yep.
I had my first cup of milk oolong tea this morning.
Good.
Yay!
How was it? Did you like it? Excellent. Good.
I love it. Thank you for the recommendation. Yes,
You're welcome.
it came yesterday, and then I tried it today, and I love it because usually green tea has like a very grassy taste.
Yeah.
But this is like really like subtle and clear. I was like, oh, this is good. I'm gonna enjoy this. So thank
Yay.
you.
All right. Good. It's one of my personal favorites, so I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it. That's good.
Yes. So apparently you have good taste in all types of drinks, right?
Well,
yes.
at least in the tea, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kid Hugh has been giving you props so far. They say thank you for bringing her on. She's an absolute gem. Sam says hi, and yes, the submissions that I've read so far are amazing. All right.
Thank you.
So, you've seen some of my lives, so we kind of keep it casual and laid back. I'll ask you some questions, but we'll also take questions from the audience, folks. So as we're talking, if questions come up, then let us know. We'll make time for Q&A for sure. So JD1710 says it's kind of hard to hear you. Is your phone resting on something?
It is.
Yeah, so it might be muting the speaker a little bit.
Okay.
Hey, Miriam.
Let's see.
Atlanta GA in the house. Welcome.
Let's see. Is that better or no?
I think that's better. hopefully.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
They'll let us know. Folks will let us know.
Okay, good.
Um, but I posted your bio on the post on Sunday, but in case people haven't read it or forgot since Sunday, why don't
Yeah.
you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. My name's Miyoshi Nottage. I hail from the beautiful islands of the Bahamas. We're known for our crystal clear waters, and which is why I am very particular when it comes to where I put my feet in water. Uh, a beach has sand and water, not rocks and water, just so you're clear. Every Bahamian will attest to this. I currently now live in Toronto. I've been here for several years. Um, you never get used to the water, to the water. I have water on my mind. To the weather, no matter what they tell you. I currently am focused on beer stuff. I'm trained as a neuroscientist. I did some specialty in linguistics because language is important and ever changing. Um, yeah. And right now, my focus is in craft beer. So specifically, my husband and I help local craft breweries. I hate to use the word diversify because it means so much to so many people, but represent more accurately people who drink beer. So yeah, instead of the typical trope which we're used to seeing, which is a white guy with a very heavy beard. So
Right. Yes. The kind of hipster look, right? Like the
exactly.
plaid shirt and
That's right.
the big
Exactly. You
beard.
see,
Yeah.
you exactly. Even people who are not that involved in beer know that. So,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
In full transparency, so I don't really drink, so I don't
Mhm.
have like any kind of knowledge, but I see the commercials, right? Like we all
Right.
see the commercials and we all
That's right.
know, like even in movies and films, like you can see the representations of people who drink beer. And
Right.
I do think about when women are represented too. It's always like usually skinny white women, like
Yes.
tossing the beer down the counter to like the hot guy at the bar.
Right. Which is funny that women are in that service role because for a long time, women were the brewmasters. So it was heralded that women should be the brewmasters. And when it was realized that they were making income and did not, quote unquote, need a man, they made them into witches, literally. So the trope that we have of a witch comes from the brewmasters. The tall hat so they could be seen in the marketplace. The actual broom was used to include the ingredients in the witch's brew, now is what we call it, but then just the brew. So for people who could not read. And so it was put up above them or outside their door. So people knew what was in the thing that they would be drinking. So once that came on board, we couldn't have that. So women got vilified and known as witches and subsequently burned at the stake. And that just, that snowballed into other things. So, you can't have a
That
good thing.
right. That just blew my mind. See, I'm
Yeah.
already like we're 10 minutes in, and I've already learned something brand new. It makes perfect sense when you say it that
Yeah,
brewing like came from like the women and the cauldrons and the pots
that's
and
right.
the brews.
That's
Um,
right.
but and how it's like demonized, right, and made to be
That's
seen
right.
as something else. Yeah.
That's right.
I also
That's
liked
right.
when you said I like when you said more accurately representing people who drink beer, right?
Right.
Because I think that's an interesting way to frame it or to phrase it, because
Yeah.
it's not just, oh, we're trying to market to these demographics. We're trying to attract these demographics. Like, no, these are
Right.
already your customers, right? These are already people
Exactly.
who are making you money, right? And you aren't representing them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
um,
So,
I'm acknowledging the folks on Facebook who are saying hi. Hopefully you can hear the whole conversation on Facebook, but if you have an IG account, you'll get the full experience over here on IG. Um, So I want to start. This is a question I always ask everyone who does a live stream with me. Is in terms of colorism, um, and whether or not you knew this word, when you were growing up or when you were younger, what do you recall being the first time you became aware of issues around skin tone, complexion, and physical appearance?
So I feel that my experience is different from a lot of people because where I grew up, I was the majority. But my first memory of home, we call it shadeism, colorism, same thing, is my mother is a dark-skinned Black woman. And I think I was about 6 years old. I do not remember the exact place we were, but I know that they were giving out like drink samples, pina coladas, not margaritas, sorry, daiquiris are a big thing where I am from, and they always give out like a virgin version for these stalls so you can decide whether you like it or not. And my mother approached the, I assume, owner, and he refused her but handed me one, and we're side by side. And I thought, that's odd. And at 6 years old, that kind of imprints. I don't think my mother actually remembers that particular incident because, quite frankly, she goes through that sort of thing all the time. And this is a place where Black people are the majority, but it also plays into the fact that we were under British rule for a very long time. And while lighter skinned folks weren't given, we weren't listed as free when we were slaves, the point is that we were treated differently, and that does imprint, and it continues to perpetuate itself, even being a now independent nation. But that is my first recollection of there's something not quite right here. Why would you? It's not like he had run out of samples or was running low and was thinking, okay, I probably have a lifetime customer in the 6-year-old potentially, or whatever it was. But I remember that very distinctly. And I remember taking account since that particular moment of how my mother was treated as opposed to how I was treated. And it's a vast difference. Even home where a lot of people assume, majority Black country, there's no such thing as colorism, and that is not the case. It's not the case at all. So
Yeah, I think everything you said, like there's so much value there. One, the connection to colonialism. Janelle Kress
yeah,
says, yes, colonialism's influence is everywhere. And I think that is that internalized oppression piece, right? So even
yeah,
though it's majority Black, most of the leaders are Black, the business owners are
yep,
Black, like it's a
yep,
Black country, right?
yep,
And yet that mentality though is still Eurocentric, still, indoctrinated by white supremacist ideas and,
yeah,
anti-Blackness and things like that. And it's
yeah,
really interesting too, because so often I think when we talk about parent relationships, you'll see like a light-skinned mom and a dark-skinned dad, right? And so the
right,
fact that your experience is slightly different, that your mom was a darker skinned person. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, it definitely happens, but
yeah,
representation wise, we don't see that as often.
right,
And I think your awareness at 6, right? Like if you were only 6 and you felt that and like you were able to like recognize like this is not right, like this is
yeah,
clearly something wrong here, and it's
yeah,
probably based on skin tone, right? I think
yeah,
it is indicative of how like prevalent it really is if a 6-year-old
yeah,
can recognize it, right? So
yeah.
now I'm really curious. Did your mom ever talk about it, like explicitly or directly?
So I would not say directly. It was more, or it wasn't framed that way. Let me put it that way. It was, um, I can't wear this color because I am so dark. It was, you know, you you have to make sure that I'm not sure how to word it, but basically I remember a cousin getting married and well, she was engaged and her fiance was very dark skinned and it was like, "Ooh, you can't bring him by Aunt so and so because, he's so dark. Don't bring him by yourself. You have to make sure everybody else is there with you." Implying it would be less of a theme, for example. So it's those sorts of things, but I definitely remember the certain colors were off limits, certain lipsticks were off limits because of it. Um, you know, uh, uh, the you could wear that, meaning me, but I, meaning her, can't. That sort of thing. So it was done in that way, but to explicitly say to me, I as a dark-skinned woman, to me, no, she never did that. But it was definitely said without preceding it with that phrase.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it's again a different culture in many
Yeah,
ways than what we have in the United States or in Canada, and yet
yeah,
it's the same story, right? In
it
terms of
is.
like darker skinned women internalizing the belief that certain colors are off limits, that we can't wear red
Yeah,
lipstick, or we can't wear neon yellow. I
yes,
love neon yellow.
yes.
Just side note,
Yeah,
um, yeah,
it's a
and
good
seeing
color.
how it is, right?
Yeah, it is.
And then it pops that much more. It looks more
It
neon
does.
on darker skin
Yeah.
tones.
Yes.
Um, and then even the partnership and the marriage dynamic, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a practice that exists across the diaspora, whatever country we're in. We hear
That's
like the same pattern being repeated, and it's
it's
really upsetting. And
yeah.
I'm curious, like in terms outside of your family, though. So
Mhm.
I obviously like that mother-daughter dynamic was a very significant like part of your understanding, right, about how skin tone matters in society. But in
Right.
terms of the broader community or the broader neighborhood or town,
Mm.
did skin tone did you observe it like in terms of other students kids you went to school with, or other relatives or friends outside of your immediate family?
Yeah, even not with friends necessarily, but another distinct memory I have, I was 14 years old. We were in a restaurant which is by the water, and um, this couple, well, we don't know if they actually had a romantic relationship, but two people came in, and I can hear the people at the other table saying, "Oh, she shouldn't be with him because her children are going to have difficult hair. They won't have that good hair because they were both dark." That sort of thing, very prevalent to think that this is the someone gets eliminated right away because already this is other people thinking about, wow, the potential for children to have quote unquote good hair or whatever the case may be. But definitely the hair thing for sure. um Dominant. uh yeah. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
that sticks. That
Yeah.
sticks. It's always, you got to make sure that you're with someone who can help your children have put in whatever phenotype here. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that in terms of representation too, right? So I
Mhm.
mentioned we don't see a lot of representations where it's a darker skinned woman and a lighter skinned man, but you also
Right.
don't see like two dark skinned people together often represented either, right? And that's probably one
That's
of the
true.
reasons. It's like, oh
Yeah.
well, no, why would you want to do that? Like it's almost like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
accepted standard, right? Like why would you do
Yes.
that? Why would you not, try to marry someone else? Um, And so you say you've been in Canada for a long time.
Hmm.
When you moved to Canada, did you move straight from the Bahamas to Canada, or was there like
Yeah.
a okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So what kinds of differences in terms of either in terms of how race mattered or doesn't matter in camp it matters.
It
How
does
how
matter.
race
Yeah.
matters or how color matters or hair texture features matter. Were there any like significant differences when you changed regions?
So for me, I was under the false impression because it's Canada, it would be okay. I was very wrong. I have to tell you, it was a rude awakening with things like people reaching to touch my hair. Now, I want to start out by saying this was in Toronto, which is, looking at the populace, is pretty diverse. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
so this isn't in the middle of nowhere where you see the earth has been untouched by the foot of man, for example. No, no, no. This is in Toronto where they're like, oh, just reaching to touch my hair. And my ignorance was shattered, I have to say, because no, everyone knows you never touch a Black woman's hair, you don't do that. Or I thought everyone knew that, and I was very wrong. So those sorts of things, and it was always, well, where are you from? I have a Japanese first name, and it throws people off. I have gone to several appointments, of course, sight unseen, and then when I arrive, it's like, are you my, you're Miyoshi? Yes. And my favorite response to my yes is, are you sure? Yes. Yes, I am. But thank you for asking. It's certain things like that. Yes, yes.
That's hilarious.
Right? It's curious to see the things that are ingrained. I don't know what they expected, but this is what they got. So
Yeah. It's so interesting, because you were in, like, going from the Bahamas to a place where, Black folks are not the majority, and there is
that's
like
it.
more diverse, groups, and seeing like the expectations. I'll have to say that with a name like Sarah, I also catch people off guard.
Yeah.
You were like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
It's so funny.
It makes you wonder, though, what name do you expect behind, a Black face, for example? Well, I find it interesting every time. I still get it. It's less often now, but yeah, it
Yeah.
still goes, huh, I'm not sure you know your name, but yes, I do.
Right. Are you sure you know who you are?
Yeah.
Which goes deeper than just a name, right? Like, are you sure
Yes.
you know who you are? Like, yes, I have
Yes.
knowledge of self, right?
Yep.
Um, and so one other thing that I want to touch on is in terms of, I think it's very interesting that you've taken your passions and applied them to another passion, right? In terms of, activism and your knowledge of things. And so what does it look like to help a company, like, you're doing specifically craft beer companies, but
Right.
what does it look like to help a company more accurately represent people who use their products?
So, to be honest, the hardest thing has been when people don't, or claim they don't, realize that they're not properly representing a particular group of people, or groups of people for that matter. And it still is, I don't want that, frustrating is the accurate word to me, to know that a particular brewery or a particular brewer, you clearly don't know the history of your craft if you're saying, which we hear often, Black people don't drink beer. Well, that's not true. um, or people of color don't drink beer. Also not true. You know, one of the long or oldest societies that we know of with regard to beer is Egypt, who with the mummified body would also store beer and wine. So it's clearly something they believed that the gods would also enjoy. It's something they used in these sorts of ceremonies. The oldest known recipe for beer is from Mesopotamia. Again, not a place dominated by the white population. So the fact that it's still prevalent, or these are the excuses that people are still using, is just that, an excuse. And you should know the history of your drink. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of them just don't care as long as they're making that money. And if anyone does not see themselves represented, they're not going to feel safe to come into your space no matter what you say, because craft is notorious for saying, oh, we're a great community, we're tightly knit, but you're excluding people. So a community for whom is the real question. So it's getting them to actually acknowledge the fact you have been ignoring entire segments of people. And then it's, oh, okay, now what? So what I do is I always suggest a training, an implicit bias training. I do not do that. Let's make this clear. So this is where I bring in other professionals who do these things. And yes, they are people of color. I make sure to do that. So nothing aggravates me more than seeing or hearing that you have a D&I committee and it's all white men or a single white man. That's
right.
So,
Come on.
yeah. So there's that, but you bring in the implicit bias training to see where not only you, but perhaps your staff have implicit bias, and we all have it. That's the thing. So I make sure and say that we all have it, because no one likes to be called biased or racist. So there's that. We all have it. I recommend every company goes through that. And then I also recommend that they bring in what I like to call an actual diversity expert to come in, a person of color come in and help them with things like policy, interactions, that sort of thing. Again, something I do not do, but I do have a friend of mine in the space who does it, Bear Diversity. Everyone up here in craft knows her. But what I have found is that most of the breweries like to wait until something has happened, an incident has happened before they call her in. And these are preventative measures. It should be done proactively, not reactively. And it's getting them to see that. As for what I specifically do, it's to get them to look at their actual photos that they have up. Social media is, it's far reaching. So when you're taking, in the last month, take any random 5 pictures and you tell me, do you see any diverse faces in there? That includes women, because, for the most part, if a woman is in the photo, she's serving the beer. It includes people of the LGBTQ plus community. Are they there? People who have visible disabilities also aren't represented accurately or at all. And sometimes they do not have access to your brewery, for example, which also is a problem. All of these things, do you see Black faces, brown faces, faces of Asian descent? These are the things that are asked. They're basic questions. And if all of those questions are no, or the majority are no, then there is an inherent problem. There is something that needs to be fixed. So it's trying to assess all of that and getting them to realize there is a big gap here, period. So you cannot say that people of color don't want to come into your brewery if you're not making them feel welcome.
Yeah.
And therein lies the problem, the lack of warmth and welcoming.
Absolutely. And I feel like craft beer is like an example of gentrification. Like a lot of times we talk about gentrification in terms of housing and real estate,
Right.
but I feel like that's other things can be gentrified as well.
Yes.
And it feels like that to me. Like that whole craft beer culture has been gentrified in a lot of ways by the hipster bearded white guys with the plaid shirts. And I used to live in the Bay Area too, so it was like I just see that image with the tattoos, and
Yeah, it dominates. Like to even own a brewery, for example, here in Ontario, where I live, you're looking at a minimum of a $2 million investment. So whenever it comes to money, it tends to be people of color who are not able to participate, no matter how that looks. you know, and it's not always a career choice that people of color think to be involved in. There are so many images of specifically Black men where they're drinking, but it's malt liquor straight from the bottle, right? You're not showing someone who can fully appreciate beer for what it is, like wine. Wine is up on this pedestal of being, oh, it's classier, for example, as opposed to beer, when you still have to go through a lot of training to produce beer. And beer, again, was an offering for the gods. It's a lot of history that has been, I don't want to say erased, but I will say deeply hidden, covered, ignored, whichever word you wish to use. And even now to get, for example, certified as a Cicerone, which is one of the levels of the mastery levels for beer, it's very pricey. So again, you're going from level 1, which is around, I don't know, I think it's $250 US, and then the next level is closer to 700 US, and then you go up into the thousands, and then if you fail, you have to, you know, pay again. So you get 2 opportunities to do it, but it's so much involved in, for example, the 3rd and the 4th levels. It's easy to not pass. Let's be honest. You're studying for months and months and months, and most people have a life outside of it. You still have to support yourself in the meantime. So yes, more and more people are going to be cut off, and less will be the quote unquote experts in this particular field, especially. So you're absolutely right. It's easy to cut off people, especially if people don't know or don't realize, this was not a thing created by white bearded men.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, Germany gets heralded for it because of the fact that they had, you know, they had rules put in place from 1516 about what can go into beer. But that being said, again, the first known recipe regarding beer is nearly 4,000 years old. So that's,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's interesting. Oh, I actually lost the thought. I lost it. Okay. So if it comes back to me, I'll bring it up. I want to start scrolling through the comments. So I haven't been keeping up with the comments throughout, but I'm going to scroll through them now and see if we have any questions. I see a question submitted through the question box, so we'll keep that in mind. But as I'm doing that, I kind of want to talk more or have you unpack or reflect on how you perceive your own skin tone and your own phenotype and hair texture. For example, do you consider yourself lighter skinned? Do you consider yourself brown skinned? If so, why? What experiences have, led you to see it one way or the other? Have you, had conversations about, skin tone privilege, or even just conversations with yourself, right? And how have you made a way to navigate through the world in your particular complexion? If that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Okay.
It's, again, my answer is going to be different because I came from a place where, again, was the majority, and now am in a place where I am not. And for me, growing up, I always thought of myself as brown, but with my mother and interacting with others. So if we're by ourselves, still think of myself as brown, interacting with her with other people, for example, my daiquiri sample example, then it was like, oh, well, I am lighter than her, but I never in my head thought myself as light-skinned until those outside interactions came into being. And by the way, I gave her my sample daiquiri just so the story is, closed. As for coming here, it was again a different experience in that seeing in a restaurant, again, for example, a darker skinned person getting a waitress being exceptionally rude, but her at least being tolerable. with me.
Mhm.
It's different. As for what and again, I go back to Canada is not above it. Let's get that right. Okay? So there's that.
I
Ask
believe
any,
you.
yeah, ask any Indigenous person, and I'm sure they will agree there. But as for what I see my role in this is, I'm a lifelong learner. I believe that in order to help, you have to hear from the people who need the help. And if I can help amplify, I hate that word so much right now, but it's the one that came to mind. If I can help others hear those voices, then so be it. Is it that someone will be more likely to open a door for me? Yeah, probably. But my job isn't just to go through that door, it's to hold it open. And if I can do that, and if at least one person who feels they have no chance, no way in hell of ever getting heard or seen or even invited can be brought through, then that's what I hope to do. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know how successful it will be, but the hope is that so many people will come through the door that the doors get knocked off the frame and they're not there anymore. That's the hope.
Yes. Blow them off the frames.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right.
We can start by opening them, and then we can continue to hold them open, and then as
Yeah.
we reach a critical mass, we can rip them off
Yeah.
altogether, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. That's the ultimate goal. So my goal is to hope whereby what I do now, my job becomes defunct and it's no longer needed.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Me too. Like I
Yeah.
hope that I don't have to talk about colorism in 10 years. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I will if I have to. I'm just saying, but if it'd be great if we don't have to keep having these
Yes.
discussions.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
says one person says was raised in Tuskegee, Alabama, 99% black. High
Mm.
school and colorism was in full effect. And so I think that was an earlier comment when you were saying, it was a country where everybody was the same race, but
Yeah.
still seeing that colorism being in full effect.
Yeah.
So let me pull up these two questions. Um, see, T Dot drinks. I just saw Dewan's question. Says Dr. Webb and Miyoshi, how are you both using your platforms to positively impact the world?
Oh,
Um,
wow.
it's like it's a very straightforward question, but it's still like not easy to answer.
No, it's not. And for me, I don't look at it as an impact to the world at large per se, but if I can impact my own corner or part of the world, then hopefully the ripple effects would continue out, as I was just saying, builds and builds, so it will carry forward. That's the goal. You never want for it to be only one person. You want it to be more than that. But if you affect the one person and they can in turn, keep multiplying and multiplying that, then good. I hope that it affects in a positive way as opposed to something negative.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of it, and I don't enjoy saying I was wrong with something, but I can say it. So if there's something to correct, I'll do it. That's the hope.
I feel that. I feel that. Like I don't want to do it, but I will. It's interesting
But
too. Go ahead.
no, but I will if
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
to.
If I have to, and I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that you talk about kind of if you can start with your world, right?
Yeah.
And that if we all focus on our worlds,
Yeah.
then we will affect the world, right?
Right.
But I think that that's a good goal to have because it does feel overwhelming, and I think some people
Yeah.
don't do anything because they're like, "Well, I'm not going to make a difference around the world, right?" But you
Yeah.
have your own inner world. Ooh, you could start with your inner world. Ha
Yeah.
ha! Like,
That's
so
good.
having an impact on your inner world
That's
first, and
right.
then like your immediate, home or family or friend circle, and also like doing it in a way that it's not going to just end with you. And I think
Yeah.
that's one way anyone can use their platform, right? Is like if
Yes.
I have this thing, I'm not going to hoard it. I'm not just going to
Yes.
keep it for me. I'm going to like share
Exactly.
it and make sure someone else gets it too. So I
Exactly.
think that's great. Um, Dewan asks, why are you so wonderful? So I think that is for both of us. And I would say, and just listening to you talk, Miyoshi,
Yeah.
because again, you were getting props, right? I forgot their screen name, but they were talking about like how you're such a gem. And for me, like one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on
Mhm.
is like you reached out to me and were you recognition, right? So
Yeah.
Brittany Cooper, from the Crunk Feminist Collective, Brittany Cooper talked about the necessity of recognition and like recognizing
Yes.
each other. And so I want to recognize you in this moment for like recognizing me, right? And it's not,
Yeah.
I recognize all my followers, but I can't, like it's hard to like identify like each one over time. So when people
Yeah.
actually like reach out and like step out away from the crowd and say,
Yeah.
hey, here's my name, here's why I follow your page, or here's a particular post that resonated with me. Like
Yeah.
it's an act of recognition that means so much to me in terms of our sisterhoods, Black sisterhoods, womanhood, even
Yeah.
in humanhood, personhood. So
That's
I appreciate that, like those acts of recognition. We need that, like the I see you,
true.
I see
Yes.
you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. I hesitated reaching out to you because in my head I was like, "Ooh, hope she doesn't think I'm one of those stalker crazy people." But that's the only reason I reached out. But I resolved it and I was like, you know what? I have to say what I have to say. And I want to again thank you for allowing me to feature you. What you do is important. And, as I said, being trained as a neuroscientist, there's a reason why I don't stay in that world daily. It's a lot. The psychology of things is a lot, and the burden can feel heavy. But for me personally, I want you to know that you absolutely make a difference. You continue to teach me. I can't speak for everyone, but I will speak for me. You have taught me, and the recommendations and references, the reading resources. I told you I'm a total nerd. I appreciate all of that. So
Yeah.
thank you for what you do. I do appreciate
Yay! I think
it.
that's like a little affirmation fest, right?
Right.
I think that's a like great note to end on. I don't see any other questions from the folks who are watching. Do you have any other questions or points that come to mind when you think about conversations around colorism or terms of representation that you want to either pose for the audience or the collective, or that you just want to speak on?
I don't know if I have a question per se. Like I said, for me, it was different. My mother was dark skinned. My mother was my entire world for damn near the majority of my life, especially those front 18 years. Uh, she is a strong woman, but I feel as though, especially with Black women, we are constantly inundated with these images of Black women being so strong they can take on the entire world. And while that is true, they also have soft emotions and feelings, and the weight can feel unbearable. So for me, in my head, I want to make sure that I do something that makes her journey easier and that makes her proud of me, because she continues to make me feel as though I'm the earth and the moon and the stars continuously. She says it all the time. I'm her one and only, so she has all the energy to put into me, for better or worse, I guess, in some cases. But she has done an amazing job, but we need to be aware of the fact that yes, Black women strong, undoubtedly, but also, you know, still women, soft, gentle feelings that we tend to associate with women. So from that perspective, I I would like people to remember that, especially women. You know, you deserve the soft places. You deserve those things. And you need to remember it's okay to have softer emotions, quote unquote softer. I say softer in as in not hard, you know, not the aggressive types of things that we see reflected as what is us. That is not the case. We have a rich and diverse history, most of which has been destroyed and lost. But again, don't let anyone tell you where you can and cannot be. Moving here, my ignorance helped me in that I didn't know there were places I wasn't supposed to be. So they can't tell you where you belong. Sometimes you have to create that space, and sometimes you're an unknowing activist just by being in a place. So you have to tend to yourself, keep yourself also protected. Mental health is an important thing and is something that is rarely discussed specifically with Black women. And when it comes to Black men, it tends to be focusing on aggression, for example. So these are things that I would like, self-care, that's what I'm trying to say. Self-care. Make sure you take time out for self-care. You do so much each and every day. Make sure that self-care is one of those things as well.
Yes. I mean, I'm glad I posed that question because you came out the woodworks with like so many gems. I will say it was beautiful to hear you reflect more on your mom and your relationship with her and what she means to you. I think that's a beautiful tribute, and I'm sure she is proud of you. And I appreciate, you know, I feel like you were speaking into me at that point too, in terms of like Black women. It's okay to be soft and know that you deserve the soft places, and just lovely, 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 lovely. All right, folks. So I will be back next week with another live stream, and folks in the chat are saying thank you as well. Oh yeah, JB17 Sin says just being or showing up in a place can be a form of activism, and I definitely agree. Like your presence alone is a protest.
Yes.
That is so deep. I loved it. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this will be saved on IGTV. If anyone came in late, you want to catch the beginning, know more about Miyoshi's earlier experiences in the Bahamas and that sort of thing. And I don't know if I have a guest next week or not, but I will be back, right, regardless. And so I hope to see all of you there. And thank you, Miyoshi, for taking the time out of your day to chat with us.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. I wanted to make sure I made you and what you do a priority. I thank you again for having me. I'm very humbled that you thought to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.